would say that Texas handled the transition to the SEC very well. The Longhorns were phenomenal, went 11-1 in the regular season, made the SEC championship game in their first year in the conference, but those two losses, both in the regular season and in the title game, came to the same team in the Georgia Bulldogs. So not quite ready to take over the conference yet from the perennial powerhouses, but still a dang good team. The Longhorns made the college football playoff. They made the playoff semifinals where they lost in heartbreaking fashion, had a chance to tie the game late against Ohio State, but instead, Quinn Ewers sacked, fumbled, and then returned all the way for the Buckeyes as the Longhorns lost 28-14. Now, entering 2025, they of course have national title aspirations, and they might be one of the most talked about teams in the country, not necessarily because of those aspirations, but because of who will be leading them. And that is quarterback Arch Manning. It is all about Arch down in Austin. Quinn Ewers gone, Arch finally getting his shot to be the starter. And look, I think he's going to pan out. I really do. I think this guy's going to live up to the hype. We saw flashes of brilliance from him last year when Ewers was down with injury. They would sometimes bring in Arch for design quarterback run packages. But Arch Manning, 939 yards, 9 touchdowns, just 2 interceptions last year, rushed for over 100 yards and 4 touchdowns. So does have a little bit of experience, but he is a dangerously mobile quarterback, something that Quinn Ewers really wasn't. So it kind of gives Texas an added element on the offensive side of the ball. Got a very strong arm, got a very accurate arm, and now with a full offseason, knowing he's a starter, working with the first team, I think he's going to do very, very well with this Texas offense. And it's not just because of him. He's got a lot of talent surrounding him, right? Quintavion Wisner returns at running back after rushing for over 1,000 yards last year. They also get the return of C.J. Baxter, was injured last year, which we thought at the time was going to be a huge blow for Texas. Wisner picked up the load quite a bit, but having him and Baxter back at running back is going to be massive for Texas, and an opportunity to take a little bit of the load off of Arch Manning's shoulders. The wide receiver, some would say, is a question. They lose their top 3 from last year, but Ryan Wingo looked pretty dang solid. DeAndre Moore returns. Both those guys had over 450 yards and a combined 9 touchdowns. Khalil Lockett is going to play a pretty big role as a freshman this year. And they also add Jack Endries in from California. He plays tight end, had over 1,000 yards with the Golden Bears in the last 2 seasons. The biggest concern for Texas offensively for me is their offensive line. One starter is back on the offensive line from last year. There's a combined just 45 starts on the offensive line this year, and last year's offensive line wasn't all that great. They gave up 37 sacks. Those numbers might go down a little bit because Manning's certainly be more elusive. He's going to be more mobile than Quinn Ewers was. Might have an opportunity to avoid more sacks, but we don't want him on the run all the time. You don't want him scrambling for his life on every single play. That Texas offensive line going to be something to monitor as the year goes on. Defensively, this will be one of the best defenses in the nation. 7 starters are back, gave up just 15.3 points per game, only 283 yards per game. Their leading tackler from last year, Anthony Hill, returns at linebacker, had 113 tackles last year and 8 sacks to go along with that. He is paired with Leona Lafau, who was 5th on the team in tackles last year. That defensive line is looking nasty. Colin Simmons had 9 sacks up front as a freshman last season. You've got Cole Brevard coming in at nose tackle from Purdue. And Trey Moore, of course, the transfer from UTSA, had 5.5 sacks for the Longhorns last year. A defense that had 46 total sacks in 2024 and could come close to matching that total in 2025. The secondary, led by Michael Taft, was 2nd on the team in tackles last year. Malik Muhammad, also back in the secondary, a secondary that only gave up 174 passing yards per game. So the Longhorns are loaded at all 3 levels defensively. They've got a young, exciting, electric quarterback in Arch Manning, a deep running back core. This, again, is a team that has a shot to win the whole dang thing. Take a look at the schedule. What a great way to open up, right? A rematch of last year's playoff semifinal matchup. A game between 2 national title contenders. Texas going on the road to take on the reigning national champions in the Ohio State Buckeyes. You've got Arch Manning versus Julian Sayin. You've got a battle up front in the trenches between a Texas offensive line that loses 4 starters and an Ohio State defensive line that loses 4 starters. That's an interesting battle to watch for there. Ultimately, this is a fun game because everybody's going to point to what happened last year. These 2 teams look so different than when they met back in January in the playoff semifinals, right? Both these teams are going to look so different. But I actually lean towards Texas in this matchup. I think I like Arch Manning a little bit more than Julian Sayin. I think he's got a little bit more experience, maybe a little bit more electricity to him. He's more mobile. I think he's got a better arm. Sain's going to do just fine in Columbus, don't get me wrong. But I like Arch Manning a little bit more than him. I like this Texas defense a lot. The Ohio State back seven is going to be really good. But as a whole, I think Texas has the better defense. If that secondary can shut down their wide receiver core, of course, led by Jeremiah Smith, I think they'll be just fine. Yes, the environment's going to be electric, but it's an 11 a.m. Central Time kickoff game, not a night game in Columbus. Could actually go in favor of Texas. We saw them go on the road, and it's a little bit different, but saw them go on the road to an early game in Ann Arbor last year and destroyed Michigan. I don't think they destroy Ohio State by any means, but the Buckeyes are also going to be starting 2 new coordinators. So they've got new leadership on the offensive and defensive sides of the ball. Just to me, continuity-wise, talent-wise, everything kind of leaning more towards Texas with the exception of home field advantage. And I do believe the Longhorns can overcome that. They're going to be 1-0 with a massive win over Ohio State. If they're not the preseason number 1 team when the rankings come out in August, they probably will be after that win over the Buckeyes. They will win their next 3 games with ease over San Jose State, UTEP, and Sam Houston. Some in-state games there. Always love to see it stay in the state. And then they get into the bulk of conference play. There we go. 4-0. Entering the bye week, they come out of the bye, they take on Florida in Gainesville. And this is a massive, massive trap game for the Longhorns. Massive, massive, massive. Maybe even a look-ahead spot for them. You're off a week of rest, maybe a little lethargic, going on the road to a very tough game in the Swamp, looking ahead to the big Oklahoma game in Dallas the next week when the Sooners are going to be much better than they were last year. So not only is it a big rivalry game, but you can't be like, we can cruise past Oklahoma. They're no good. They're going to be good this year. So this is a Florida team that, I might not be as high on as some others, but we know they are loaded with talent. If DJ Langway can stay healthy, he has the potential to be one of the best quarterbacks in this league. He has a lot of talent surrounding him, both in the running back core and the wide receiver core, and I really, really do love that Florida defense. All 3 levels of that Florida defense look really, really good. A Florida defense that had 39 sacks last year, returned 7 starters. Look, I'm going to pick Florida to win this game. I am. And I know a lot of Texas fans are probably going to be livid with that, and they're going to laugh at it and say, how can you have us beating Ohio State but losing to Florida? And again, it's because of everything I just mentioned. Florida's defensive line, from an experience standpoint, is better than that of Ohio State's defensive line. Texas, as we know, has major questions on the offensive line. I think this Florida defense is going to generate quite a bit of pressure on Arch Manning, and I wonder, can he deliver in this tough of an environment? I'm not saying it's tougher than Columbus, but it's still going to be very, very tough. Can he deliver in this environment? Can he make the right reads, make the right plays against a Florida defense that's going to be going after him all day long? Can this Texas defense, as good as they're going to be, shut down the mobile quarterback in DJ Langway? Can they contain him into the pocket and force him to win the game solely through the air? A lot of questions to me for this game for Texas. Florida's going to come into this game, for me, nothing to lose. They're already going to have played LSU. They're going to already play Miami. They're coming off a week of rest as well. Could be a backs against the wall type of game where the Gators have to find a way to win to avoid another rough start. Or if they're off to a very fast start, an opportunity for them to really solidify themselves as true national title, playoff, SEC title contenders, things like that. I like this Florida team quite a bit. The Gators pulled off massive upsets at home last year, beating LSU and Ole Miss, both in the Swamp. They're bound to pull one off this year. I think it comes against the Longhorns in a prime look-ahead spot, a prime trap game spot, and Texas does fall victim. They are 4-1, but honestly, maybe a good wake-up call for them too, because they get ready for Oklahoma. So they kind of get popped in the mouth. No looking ahead past Oklahoma. They're going to be hyped for this game. The Red River Shootout. They beat the Sooners 34-3 last year, absolutely annihilated them. I think it's much closer now because Oklahoma does have a lot of talent coming in. John Mateer is in, along with his offensive coordinator, Ben Arbuckle. You've got Jaden Ott. You've got healthy wide receivers for once. Oklahoma's issue last year was not, for the entire season, not just against Texas, their issue was not the defense. It was the poor offensive play. It was poor quarterback play. It was the fact they had no one to throw the ball to. All that changes now with 8 starters back on defense. Look, Texas is going to win this game, but it will be significantly closer. A couple of years ago, when Texas won 49-0, Oklahoma bounced back and actually beat the Longhorns 34-30. They got destroyed, Oklahoma did last year. I think they bounced back and play much better ball. But Texas, still the better team on both sides of the ball. They get the win. They're 5-1. Let's go ahead and make them 8-1 because, let's be honest, they're going to cruise past Kentucky. They're going to cruise past Mississippi State, 2 of the worst teams in the conference this year. And they host Vanderbilt, who, yes, played Texas close, only lost 27-24 in Nashville, but now in Austin. Don't really see it being as close anymore, despite all the heroics from Diego Pavia. So they're 8-1 heading into their bye week to take on Georgia. So the bye week's coming at great times, right? Right before a road game at Florida, right before a road game at Georgia, who has Texas's number, right? We said Texas had a great introduction to the SEC, but they still couldn't beat the top dog. Literally. Still couldn't beat Georgia at home in Austin. Georgia won 30-15 in a game where both offenses really struggled. Texas was held to 259 yards of offense. Georgia was held to 283 yards of offense. So neither offense eclipsing 300 yards, and yet Georgia won by 15. Then they met a few weeks later, a couple months later, in the SEC Championship. Georgia winning that game 22-19 in overtime. And Texas still found a way to lose despite outgaining the Bulldogs by 112 yards. And despite, Carson Beck got hurt in that game. So Gunnar Stockton actually led them to victory down the stretch. So 2 heartbreakers for Texas. Didn't hurt them in the long run. They still made the playoffs. Still made it further than Georgia in the playoffs. But now, you have to go on the road to Athens against a new quarterback, dual threat quarterback, and Gunnar Stockton, who's going to have over 2 months of playing time now with the Bulldogs. You have to go to Athens, where they are 50-4 at home under Kirby Smart. Coming into the season, they'll have won 31 straight home games. I don't think Texas can win this game. Despite how good this team's going to be, Georgia is going to be just as good, if not better. Their defense, once again, will be elite. I think their offense is going to be better than people realize, especially if Gunnar Stockton can pan out, live up to the hype. Factor in the home field advantage. Factor in that Georgia's defense could be just as good, if not better, than they were last year. And Texas, as great as their offense was last year, as great as it was this year, was held to 20 points or less 3 times. Georgia did it twice. The other team that did it was Ohio State in the playoffs. So all that being said, I think they are going to lose to Georgia. Too tough of a place to play. Too good of a team as a whole. Could be a top 5 matchup. The Bulldogs get the better of them again, but they might get to have a shot at revenge in the SEC Championship if they can both get there. Texas will round out the year with back-to-back wins over Arkansas and A&M. I honestly am not concerned too much about either of those. They should cruise past the Hogs. They beat them by 10 last year, only mustered 315 yards of offense, but held Arkansas to 231. And despite Taylor Green returning for the Hogs and there being a rivalry game and things like that, I just don't think Arkansas has nearly enough to win this game on the road. And then A&M, that's the one I'd be more concerned about. Rivalry game, anything can happen in that. The Aggies have a dang good football team. Only lost by 10 to Texas last year, 17-7 in their first meeting since 2011. But Texas outgained the Aggies by 214 yards. Their defense was phenomenal. I think the defense pans out once again against this Texas A&M offense. It's going to be much better than they were last year. Good quarterback play, Marcel Reed, trio of running backs. They've got a lot of talent, and their defense really, really good too. I think this game is actually very similar to last year. Relatively low scoring. I think Texas wins by roughly 10 points or so. They get the win, though, and they are 10-2, 6-2 in conference play in their second year in the conference. Look, that's good enough to get into the playoff. 10 wins, you're in. Only losses are to Florida and Georgia, you're in. All right, you're going. And look, I will tell you, I think Texas is going to lose 2 games this year. I don't see this team going undefeated. I don't see them going 11-1. Maybe you don't like the Florida loss and you'll have them lose to Ohio State. It's a very losable game. Maybe you think they could lose to Oklahoma. Maybe you think they'll lose at home to A&M, although I think unlikely. I think Ohio State, Florida, Oklahoma, and Georgia are their toughest games of the year, and 3 of them are on the road. 1 of them's a neutral site. So 4 very tough games. I think they split those tough games. I think they go 10-2. That will be good enough to get to the playoff. 6-2 in conference play, probably going to be good enough to get to the SEC Championship. It does depend on everybody else. What does Georgia do the rest of the way? What does Alabama do? What does LSU do? Texas avoids the Crimson Tide and the Tigers. So something to watch out for there. But regardless, this will be a playoff team. And as we've seen, once you're in the playoff, it doesn't matter what your record is, what your seed is. We saw that last year from Ohio State. Anything can happen. The Longhorns, another successful year in the SEC, back to the playoff where they look to actually get past the semifinals this year and win the whole dang thing. So guys, as always, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos, and check out everything down in the description below. That includes our website, thegridironexpert.com, home to our expert picks, some of the best college football and NFL spread picks in the entire country, beating out over 80% of the national handicappers for the last 6 years. So go check it out. The link for that down in the description below, along with our weekly newsletters, which is home to tons of exclusive content that you do not want to miss out on. The link for it, again, down in the description below, over on thegridironexpert.com. And once again, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on The Gridiron Expert.
Yeah.